when President Clinton was facing impeachment proceedings in 1998. In November of that year, just before Thanksgiving, 1998, the Judiciary Committee in the House also decided that they should try to cover some of those same bases that were covered by the Watergate Committee, the constitutional grounds for impeachment. In the Clinton impeachment, though, in the 90s, they decided that they wouldn't approach this issue just by doing a report on it, the way the committee did in Watergate. They instead decided that they would convene a public hearing on the matter, much like the one we had today. And because time is a circle and dogs chase their own tails and no one is very imaginative in Washington, not one but two of the witnesses who were brought in to opine on the constitutional grounds for impeachment in the Clinton impeachment hearings in 1998, not one but two of them were the same witnesses, the actual same men who were brought forward today to opine on the constitutional grounds for impeachment of President Trump. One of the guys who was testifying in the Clinton constitutional grounds for impeachment hearing in 1998 was Michael Gerhardt, constitutional law professor, who was at the College of William and Mary back then. He is now a law professor at the University of North Carolina, but it is the same guy, 21 years between his two appearances at impeachment hearings. The Clinton impeachment hearing on the constitutional grounds for impeachment also featured testimony from another witness who we heard from today. Then and now, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley.
If you decide that certain acts do not rise to impeachable offenses, you will expand the space for executive conduct, and we will have to live with that expansion.
That was the 1990s iteration of respected constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley arguing in the context then of the Clinton impeachment that President Clinton must be impeached. Otherwise, every president will try to get away with this kind of stuff. Today, of course, we saw the same professor, Jonathan Turley, arguing just as emphatically that right now we don't have to worry about those same things. That there's no real risk that President Trump's behavior might legitimize future presidential misconduct if it is left unpunished. He did not argue that today the way he did in the Clinton impeachment. Today, to the contrary, he argued that the real risk is in impeaching President Trump. And that the House should not rush into that because that's such a big, scary thing to do. And Professor Turley isn't himself the subject of these proceedings. Him changing his mind on this stuff over time is like an interesting thing to note about him as a congressional witness. It's not particularly material to what we are facing in terms of this decision for the Congress and the country. But seeing Professor Turley and seeing Michael Gerhardt, seeing them both testifying at both of these impeachment hearings for Clinton in 98 and for Trump today, recognizing that the report of the Watergate Committee that came out in February 1974 was on this same subject, the constitutional grounds for impeachment. It's kind of a good reminder, I think, that this is part and parcel of how we as a country approach presidential impeachments, at least in the modern era. There does have to be a reckoning with what the Constitution says impeachment is for. And considering the impeachment of any particular president rightfully involves a robust discussion and a robust argument as to whether the president's behavior that is under scrutiny is the kind of thing that rises to the level of what impeachment is supposed to fix. That's why we do hearings like this.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.